Hello everyone, we're back with round 3 of the Lebanese Chess Championship and I'm talking to you from the future. I already know the result, but do you guys know? No you don't. Okay, you can. but hey, if you've made it this far, round 3, why not watch all of the rounds coverage, which will hopefully be there very soon, as long as I have the willpower to record them. Yeah, alright guys, so as you can see here, Amr beat Mahdi, and it was a really nice game by Amr and some very astute and deep preparation by Amr. So with that in mind, let's take a look at the game. So starts off with Mahdi's favorite defense, the French defense, and we get to see the normal response. But now the advanced French, which has been gaining in popularity at the highest of levels, so Amr is doing a smart job in picking this opening. I think he usually plays knight c3. Now Mahdi goes for b6, which is a very uncommon move. Of course, against the advanced c5 is just the most common. Now actually it's the second most common because there aren't many other reasonable options after b6. So already Mahdi was opting for a sideline here. You can see here that b6 is the second most common, but look at the statistics here. Look at how far off it is. So we got c b6, c3. Normal move, you just have to solidify the center. And queen d7. With some specific ideas in mind. One of them is to prevent bishop b5, of course. And the other is just the queen doesn't really have many other useful squares to develop to. And at some point black would like to play bishop a6, and the queen is good here so that it could defend the weakened light squares. Knight h3, which is a very deep move by Amr. Actually the engine takes a lot of time to appreciate this move, so it was either like supremely deep prep by Amr, or he just found this move humanly to be so good. In either case, it's a brilliant move. The point, as you can see by the annotations on the right, that white is able to go knight f4 and pressurize black's king side from there. So let me put up some arrows there. So we have knight f4, and this pressure on the king side will prove to be very difficult to stop for black. So here we had the possibility of black going c5, which is such a normal French move, and this is basically, as you can see from the annotations on the right, black had the opportunity to play c5 on 4 different occasions and did not. So that was basically Mahdi's downfall in this game. From the opening he wasn't playing c5, and that basically cost him he got a bad position out of the opening, and Amr crushed after that. So here he played knight e7 instead, which is not even necessary. Like, the knight could go to h6, knight could go to e7, but c5 should always be played. There's no reason not to. Now he might have been afraid of maybe opening up the center when he isn't so fully developed, but this is the French. The center is closed, so that's not really a justified fear. So knight f4 was played in line with the idea, and now knight g6, also I guess in line with the idea of knight e7, but obviously white will just not trade pieces. Why not trade pieces? Well, we have a space advantage as white. When you have a space advantage, you don't want to trade pieces. Why is that? You don't want to trade pieces when you have a space advantage, because the point of the space advantage is that white is restricting, in this case, white is restricting black. So when you're restricted, you have less freedom. When you have less freedom, what is necessary to have more freedom? Fewer pieces. Like, the problem here is that when you have less freedom, your pieces step on each other's toes. Like, there's only one a6 square. Maybe the knight wants to go here, maybe the bishop wants to go here. But if you trade off one knight, then only the bishop can go here, and you feel much less constrained. So you suffer less under the duress of the space advantage. So it basically at some point doesn't even become an advantage. So that's why it's important not to trade pieces when you're the one with the space advantage. But again here, c5 was missed here, and c5 was missed here. Instead, black played bishop a6, which is a highly questionable move, because you're just really helping white develop. I mean, I get you're getting rid of the light squared bishop. I mean, that's basically the whole point of this variation. You get rid of this light squared bishop, okay, great, and then you're able to argue that this bishop is bad because it's hemmed in, while this bishop is good. But this is all so theoretical. The position is completely closed, bishops don't matter that much, and the game is all about the attack that's forthcoming. So not so good. So bishop a6, knight a6, queen e2, obviously developing with tempo. Queen d3 was also possible, but I don't see much of a difference. Queen e2 is just maybe a bit safer because you keep the queen close to your king. Knight b8, no other square, castles, and knight c6. Again, you need to play c5. No other way about it. No way to slice it, man. No way to slice it. You have to play. c5. And now Amr goes for the kill. Basically, he goes for f4, gaining very, very large amounts of space and just trying to crash on through with f5. So, black here could have potentially played rook g8 with the ideas you shall see. You just keep the king in the center, you develop your bishop to e7. The point of rook g8 is to protect against knight takes g7 check. And you maneuver your knight to b7, the one on c6, you get it to b7, where you can then push c5, which you should have done earlier, of course. And a5 to just gain space on the queen side. This was a possible plan. Instead, he went for castles, which is just basically inviting an attack. Now you're getting into a race which you can never hope to win. First of all, because your attack on the king side is non-existent, and we'll see this later in the game. In fact, we can see it on the next move. White basically, this is a very interesting move, because white basically, he's even trying to open up the king side when he's the one castled there. So black has no attack on the king side, white is even opening it up out of his own volition, the king side. And the attack is obvious on the queen side. So for example, b4, a5, this is just obvious. Now g4, maybe not the best move, at least according to our silicon friend, but I really like it. So rook g8, preparing to develop the bishop. f5, very white is just opening up because black has nothing. And now knight h8, and this is basically the losing move, because when the knight is there, bye bye, you're just playing down a piece. The much better try was e takes f5, g takes f5, and now knight h4, which seems like it's losing the knight after queen g4, let's say, but queen g4 doesn't win the knight, of course. There's just bishop e7. So that's the reason why this is working. So knight g3 here, bishop e7, and this knight won't be lost, and at least it's doing something here, right? Something. And there's potential for this, maybe some of that. There's some reason to play for here. Okay, g6, maybe f6, but something like that. But after knight h8, you're just playing down a piece. And Amr finds actually the best move here, which is bishop g5, a brilliant move with many tactical ideas. The primary point is just that after f6, you completely shut off the king side, and then you're free to attack on the queen side. And this knight looks so silly here. So rook e8 was played. Now let's see an alternative, bishop e7, let's say. Here you get to see f6, and if g takes, just bishop takes. The queen is of course protecting against rook takes g4 check, and you have knight here. And okay, the knight might be able to come here, but these squares are for the moment actually not really covered, the square. But I mean, even on h4, it's not doing anything. And you get to see the point, right? Like in the previous variation, we got our knight immediately to h4. While here, we put it on h8, and then our best square is to go to h4. So seeing that from the start, you should have put it on h4. Okay, bishop g5, rook e8, and f6. Very smart, closing down the king side. And we get to see queen d8. And white just continues with their development. Now, just as an aside here, after g takes f6, insisting on opening the king side, this doesn't work because of knight takes f6. And if we see one variation, which is queen d8, you just take here. Maybe you think you can take here. Well, you can, but after knight f6, you're just getting mobbed here. You have white has an excellent exchange. The attack is coming. There's zero chances. There are zero chances on the king side for black, and yeah, that's just it. And instead of queen e7, kind of the same thing happens, so it doesn't matter. So queen d8, and here basically the game is winning. White tries, black tries some things. Again, takes here, just knight f6, and g5 just locks the position, like black is the one locking the position. And white crashes on through on the queen side, and knight b3 is clever, intending to take to keep open the queen side. Knight f4 trying to open up the king side, but you know what? He just doesn't care. Just takes and doesn't care. The bishop, of course, it's welcome to lose this bishop because of these bad pawns. I mean these pawns which block in the bishop, making it a bad bishop. Takes. And now, a brilliant move by Amr, knight g7. What's the point? The point is simply a checkmate. So if this is captured, this is the whole point. Queen a6 check, king b8, knight here is leading to mate after something like this. And if king d7, knight c5 is mate. So you see why we played knight g7? To distract this bishop away from protecting against c5. So if the bishop were here, knight takes c5 would have been possible, but not the case. King d7 and queen b5, and now Mahdi resigned because let's say queen b8 happens, we just take the rook, and that's all she wrote here. You're just up material, and these pawns, yikes. Very easy one. So yeah, what a brilliant game. Knight g7 is such a chef's kiss here, such a nice move. So very brilliant game by Amr. Very aggressive, very well prepared, very nice ideas from the opening. Mahdi never really got into the game because he never played c5. So congratulations to Amr for this game. But would you believe it if I told you? Okay, let's keep it till later. But guys, I'm just going to tell you from now. The best game of the tournament, which won the Brilliancy prize of the tournament, is actually coming up later. So while this game is so good, so pretty, there's actually something even better. So for the second game we have Antoine against Sursock. So the game was a bit insipid, I guess. There was of course a lot of fight in it, but it kind of dried out too quickly, and yeah, it wasn't anything, of course, like the Amr game. So without further ado, let's take a look. So we have a Sicilian, and Sursock goes for the O'Kelly variation, which is very nice. So the point of this variation, of course, is that after d4, which is perhaps a bit of an inaccuracy, takes, knight f6, knight c3. Now you can play e5. So this is basically an improved Kalashnikov, Svechnikov, because you can't go knight b5 here, and black enjoys a good position here. Probably slightly better, right? The engine gives equal, but this is basically slightly better for black. Now, of course, there's like playing d4 automatically, this wouldn't be good. And of course, Antoine knows that, so he plays knight c3, which still isn't so accurate though, because now, as you can see, black can play b5. So if both knight c3 and d4 don't really offer white an advantage, what is to be done? Well, you have c4, preventing b5, just locking up the center, that's one way. And you have c3, where you try to transpose to an Alpine Sicilian, where playing the move a6 doesn't really make a lot of sense. So both of these ways are ways to counteract the O'Kelly variation, if you ever encounter it, which you might. So it's not so rare. But instead, Antoine, for whatever reason, played knight c3, which is rather surprising because he's a very good theoretician. b5, d4 takes, and you can see here that black is fine. I mean, of course they're not super developed, but they have a nice queenside diagonal here to work with. And like, if you compare these to the St. George's defense positions, these are one of the best of these kinds of positions. So yeah, a bit surprising. Anyway, bishop d3 and whoops, g6, which is, yeah, I get you want to double fianchetto, but you've already wasted time with the queenside development, so why not just develop like this and try to develop quickly. Okay, but g6 shouldn't be too bad. Castles, bishop g7, bishop e3, normal moves. So let's go slowly. Castles, bishop g7, bishop e3, and now d6. Some weird kind of dragon with like kind of a dragon dwarf somehow, but yeah, I mean, it's fine for black, of course. But here actually I liked the idea of playing knight c6, intending to meet takes a4, and after b4 knight a2. Wait, actually I forgot my own annotations. Yeah, oh yeah, I wanted to show why knight c6 isn't such a great idea. Yeah, I don't like that. So let's say knight c6, you take, you push a4, b4, and now you have the very brilliant knight a2. So let's see the complications here. Of course, you might be asking what happens if this. I just go here, you come back here, and I take the pawn, and this should be better for white for several reasons. Now you might be losing this pawn, but do we care? No, we don't. Of course, we even have this. And the main reason is just development. Black is super underdeveloped, and white has a reasonable attack against the king. So that's why knight a2 is so brilliant. The problem with something like knight d5 is that after takes, bishop takes, you come back here. Now I have bishop c3, and you no longer, the knight on a2 would have been able to take the bishop, but now it's not able to. So remember here, you can't come here because I just take, and then your dark squares are fried basically. So knight c6 wouldn't have been such a good option, and in principle it's also not a good option because it blocks the bishop. So d6 was a good move, but a4 still is also a good move. b4, knight d5, knight f6, all very normal. Of course, you never want to take this with the bishop because then you have very bad light square weaknesses. Takes here, takes here, of course, not with a pawn. Why ruin your structure? Queen d2, normal development. a5, trying to trade off some pieces, give this knight some scope. Interesting move, but of course it invites bishop b5 check, which was played, but more accurate was simply, to play bishop h6, intending after takes to play bishop b5 check, then giving up the knight for bishop. Bishop for knight, of course, isn't good for black, again because of the dark squares, especially because black can't castle. So bishop h6 prevents castling, first of all, and also it attacks black's dark squared weaknesses. And yeah, it's a more flexible kind of move, while bishop b5 check forces the response, which is bishop b5 check here. God, okay, bishop b5 check here forces knight d7, and now you can transpose kind of by playing bishop h6, but instead Antoine didn't find that for some reason, which is also a bit weird, and he played f3, which is very passive. Okay, I mean, he of course didn't play this because he didn't want to lose the pawn, but this pawn doesn't count for anything because this king is just permanently stuck. Look at these bishops, and you have like the rook coming here, maybe even knight f5 in some positions, knight c6. This is just gone for black. So f3 is just too timid, and black was able to castle, and here Antoine tried to trade more pieces with bishop d5, which is again slightly questionable. Why trade off this good dark square bishop? I get that this bishop is also good, but then you kind of like black has the control of the dark squares while you don't really, so you kind of suffer under that. So c3 should have probably been tried, which is much better in principle. You just solidify the center and are threatening to take on b4. Instead, bishop g5 and bishop takes g5 actually wasn't so accurate, because black had the possibility to immediately push e5, uncovering this threat and threatening the knight. So white would be forced to capture, and after takes, knight b3, d5 is coming, bishop a6 to trade off the bishop, and black enjoys a good position, especially when d5 comes. Instead, Sursock also took, takes, queen b6, and now queen e3 back. Rook a d1 was actually a fun way to continue. The point is that, of course, e5 isn't really winning a piece because you're attacking the knight on c5. Instead, he played queen e3, knight e5, knight f5, queen c7, knight d4, and this is this was here a draw. Actually, they agreed on a draw, which is also premature because even after queen takes e3, both sides can play on. Of course, note that the knight can't be captured because of this. Now knight f5, queen c7 could have been a way to play on for black, knight d4 and rook c8, and you have queen b6 back, and now you at least improved the position of your rook. But both sides were content with a draw, and yeah, they just went for it. So this game leaves you a bit wanting to see a bigger fight, but that was fine, of course. Both sides played very well, so a draw is a reasonable result. It's a good result. Next up, we have Giorgio against Mahmoud. So here we have a normal King's Indian defense, and then it becomes abnormal with h4. An idea that's also gaining in popularity, especially with the rise of neural nets. And I think Carlsen has many games actually in this, and yeah, this is actually becoming popular, but I don't like it at all, because very simply now Mahmoud here plays the maybe slightly inaccurate h5, which I gave it okay, interesting but probably dubious sign. But yeah, so just d6, which is normal in these positions, and now if e4, just c5, and I don't get why white should be better. Like, why, when you insert this kind of center, when you have this kind of center and insert this h4, yeah, I don't know, it doesn't sit well with me to play this as white. Okay, but we saw h5 instead, e4, d6, bishop e2, c5 still, kind of the same thing, d5, and now Mahmoud for no reason, Abdulaziz for no reason plays plays b5, which is an unnecessary pawn sacrifice. I get it's Banco Gambit-esque, but I don't know, there's no real reason to give white these chances. White has already conceded something, to be honest, with h4. h5 is much more natural than h4 for black, for white in these positions. So why not just play e6, try to open up the center and try to punish white for this early h4. Instead, b5, driving this game into a Banco Gambit-esque position, which is basically what happens. Yeah, of course, this should be better for white. Bishop d7, and now queen c2. A bit too committal, just bishop c4 and play some of these rook a3, f3, maybe knight f3, maybe bishop g5 ideas. This is where the pieces belong. The rook definitely belongs in a3, where it protects the knight on c3 and gets out of the way of this dark squared bishop. And the bishop definitely belongs on g5. I don't see really a better square. And f3 is natural to solidify the center and protect against the g4 square. And if you don't want to play f3, you can also develop with knight f3, which is also a very natural square for the knight, where it can play knight d2, knight c4 and develop that way. Instead, queen c2 is a bit too committal. There's no reason to put the queen here just so early. Knight a6 is also an interesting move, trying to attack b4, but there was no reason, and you can just castle, because now you need all the firepower you can get, and actually Black's king kind of gets in a bit of trouble because they don't castle. So knight f3, knight b4, queen e2, all very natural, and now queen a5, which is still strange, which is rather strange. Just castle and avoid a hassle, right? Now queen a5, you're kind of inviting this knight c4 idea, which is peculiar to me. So castles, castles, finally castling, and now knight d2. Actually, this is a bit premature, but for the reason we'll see now. White should have just developed and then prevented knight c2, which is what happened in the game, or developed here. Instead, knight d2 allows knight c2 with the familiar knight d4 trick. So here you have this, and of course this bishop is threatened. So white should have prevented that. Instead they played too quickly, I don't know if in terms of time, but too quickly in terms of the game's progression. They played knight d2 without further development, which they have the luxury of time to develop. They're just up a pawn, to be honest. This Benko gambit doesn't inspire much confidence here. So here we had the possibility of queen d3, which wouldn't have been such a good move actually, because of queen b4, which attacked some crucial squares, and there's this coming, so this wouldn't have been so great. White still has maybe a slight advantage, but nothing more. Instead, knight takes a5 was good, knight takes e2 check, and now basically the final blunder of the game is knight takes e2, allowing basically a draw, because you stop protecting here and here. Instead, much more inspiring and much more accurate was bishop takes e2, allowing rook takes a5, but now simply bishop d2 or bishop g5, and yeah, you're simply up a piece here. I get that Gio perhaps didn't want to face this long-lasting pressure with rook b8, rook a8, and all of this Benko stuff, but really this Benko isn't so great, to be honest, and the Benko itself even isn't really so great, and yeah, you just enjoy a good edge. This is more like a draw offer after this, and if you go a bit slowly, many pieces will get traded. Of course the rook is attacked here, so you can't take here, and now this is defended, and yeah. Anything more to add? Yeah, of course white still has a pawn here, but it's not as effective as when you have all the pieces on the board. Here it'll just get liquidated. This is where the true strength of the Benoni shines, of the Benko shines, in the endgame basically. And well, maybe not always, of course, but you know what I'm saying. And now here a way to play on was this, but after rook c2 I don't see how you're playing on. This just liquidates, and yeah, it's just a draw. Again, let's try maybe to go a bit slower. Just a draw, nothing more to say here. En passant, and not much else. So a draw. Very nice play by Gio and Abdulaziz. Both played very well, to be honest. But Gio navigated the complications quite well and got an advantageous position. It's a bit of a shame he wasn't able to convert. And now, okay, I'll start off with this, the fifth game actually, Khaled against Adib, because the fourth game I have in the study, which I'll introduce as the fifth game in this video, something exquisite, I have to say. Alright, so what happened here? Yeah, okay, so let's start off with Khaled against Adib. So we have this, this is called the Lion's Jaw, an interesting way to meet the Peart / Philidor setups. you get some kind of now this is transposing to a same-ish actually, and bishop g5, which isn't so good in the same-ish. You just play bishop e3, c5, knight g2, much more common in the same-ish. So castles and bishop g5, c5. All see, Adib plays e6, which is what's necessary. No reason to play like b5, and e takes d5, and now c takes d5, which is fine in principle, like you want to solidify the center, but actually knight takes d5 had a very specific idea in mind, which is the pin and the fact that then the other knight can come to c3. So in that way, like let's say something like queen a5 check happens, well, first of all you have bishop d2 and then knight c3, but also you can even play knight c3 and after takes. Actually that doesn't really, it kind of works but doesn't really work. So the line I was thinking about was this. Here of course you just play bishop d2 if you want simplicity, but I was thinking about this, and even now this. Now you might be afraid of this, and okay, this might be a bit annoying I guess, but actually because you lost the dark squared bishop as black, this doesn't look so swell. Now the only problem here I guess is f5, which might turn the tables. I haven't analyzed this, so let's check what the engine said. Still even gives an advantage for white, which should be expected. So queen a5, it even recommends b4, which is a bit strange. Okay, so forget all of my b5. Yeah, and queen e2. Okay, all of what I said is wrong. But the important thing is the principle. So yeah, okay, this I can see why this would be bad because of b5, b4. Okay, that makes sense. Now what doesn't make sense to me is b4. What's the point? Okay, you just block the, yeah, sure. Yeah, this is obvious as well. So here I guess after queen a5 check you have to play b4, so let's promote that variation, and that's basically winning. So yeah, that's the reason. But yeah, my point here is that later on you can play knight c3, or let's also add now yeah, you can also play this of course. So that's the main point. You just have easier development. The problem after c takes d5, your development is so difficult with these two pieces. So that's the main idea. So knight b d7, knight g3, h6, bishop e3, knight g3. Yeah, it doesn't inspire a lot of confidence, right? Having this knight here. What is it even doing? Is it preparing some knight h5? What does it do? And here h5, making use of this terrible knight's position, was warranted, preparing h4 and even h3. Instead, black went for knight e5, which is questionable because of bishop e2, and now you have some f4 ideas creeping up. So black should have tried a6 here, trying to prepare b5, which makes a lot of sense. Instead he went for the very weird knight h5, ruining the structure for no real rhyme or reason. Queen d2, standard development, though here there is something to be said about just castling, maybe h3, f4 later on. If f5, he might have been afraid of that, just queen d2 and you attack h6, and I don't really see what black should be happy about. Instead queen d2, king h7, and now h3, which is a bit weird. I get they're trying to play, I mean Khaled's trying to play f4, but what's funny is that he doesn't even play it. So yeah, h3 is fine, but you should follow up correctly. So he plays f5 here, and now for some reason goes king d1. He must have miscalculated something, connected with the diagonals and all of that stuff. But here you can just castle, of course. There's no real reason not to, and just play f4 in line with h3. King d1, he must have been seeing ghosts here, and yeah, it was a very bad blunder. Adib continued with h4, which is interesting. He could have taken, he could have pushed f4, rook e1, and now f takes e4 made more sense than what was played, which is queen f6. which is an error for the reason we'll see just coming up. F takes e4 simply opens up the position when this king is, I don't know why it's here even. F takes e4 would allow this rook to be able to have a very nice scope here, and eventually you'll get some rook f2 ideas depending on what happens. a6 b5 is a threat. White's king will never find safety. And after knight takes e4, bishop f5, again this kind of stuff is threatened. a6 b5, very annoying. All of this is just so bad. Instead he played queen f6, and this is not so good because now you have the standard response, which is f4. Now Khaled might not have played that because of knight g6, seemingly creating some weaknesses here, like this is a threat maybe. But it's not really all that much of a threat, to be honest, and even so you have this and being able to recover c5. Now this looks scary because all of your pieces are here, but you have adequate defenses, and at least you have some kind of harmony for your pieces, right? So rook e8, king c2, you have some sort of harmony potentially. But the way this played out, queen f6, rook b1, no real harmony, and Adib finally plays f4, bishop f2, bishop d7. And I'm not seeing like, well, where is this guy going? Well, what are you really doing here? It's a bit questionable. He goes king c2, but actually here there was this brilliant move b4, which again seems very counterintuitive, especially because of this. But actually you just really want to get some space going for your rook. So after c takes b4, you have rook takes b4, and you have this bishop d4 idea as well, which helps, supported by the rook, so we don't lose any of this, any bishop here, of course, any knight here, of course. And if c4, trying to close down the position, which is the correct response, you have a4, sorry, a4, trying to push through b5 at some point as well, maybe a5, and most important, preventing black's own b5, because if you play something nonsensical like rook f1, there's b5 and there's a5 is coming, and black will crash on through on the queen side. But instead, if you play a4, it's very difficult for black to be able to open up the queen side. So b4 was a very clever move, which allowed after c takes b4, rook takes b4, and after c4, a4, both of which would have promised better defenses for white. Instead, king c2, and now black plays the very good a6. I should annotate this as a good move. Rook ec1, b5, and yeah, it's just lost. It's just lost. White needs 7 billion years to get any kind of attack going on the queen side, on the king side, and yeah, he's getting crushed on the queen side. So b3, get to see this. No really reason to take, by the way, to give up your light squared bishop. No real reason to do that. And now knight g6 was maybe a bit questionable because it offers some fortress possibilities for white. Now white's only trump card here is this, and it's enough actually to promise some fortress possibilities. Now instead, black should have played queen g6, a very brilliant move which simply attacks this pawn, and the whole point is this basically. So queen f1, bishop f6, and these kinds of moves give black a solid advantage because there's no way to winning advantage, not solid advantage, because there's no way to defend the g2 pawn. And if something like rook c2 is tried to maybe at some point defend the g2 pawn, there's simply queen takes g2 winning the g2 pawn immediately. So queen g6 would have actually been basically winning. It's a bit difficult to see this move because you're focused on quicker moves, especially with white's king being as such. But when you notice that white really has zero counterplay and zero things going on for them, you can just slowly pick up that pawn and just mop up the king side and win that way. Somewhat engine-esque though, I have to agree, so knight g6 cannot be faulted because you really want to open up the diagonal and start harassing this king. But now white has some fortress chances, so they play bishop d3 here, trying to get the bishop to a better square and line up with the king, of course. King h8, and now bishop e2. Fortress, just trying to shuffle the pieces a bit. And now finally black takes, which I don't know how good that is, because again the best was just taking here. And I don't know about giving up the light squared bishop because this bishop is quite a good defender. Yeah, so let's reinstate this. So here queen g5 would have been good at again attacking g2. Instead, he plays the egregious bishop c3, which is not so egregious because it's difficult to see that here actually. So you gave up one bishop, right? So what happens here? The second bishop takes 95, rook b5, and this is just a fortress and potentially better for white because it's so much easier to play with the two bishops. It's very difficult to assess this position as such. Actually, not very difficult. I would say it's difficult to assess this position as such, but not impossible, of course, because like you have to think, of course, the sacrifice just plays itself first of all. All strong players know that, and Khaled definitely considered it, obviously, but that's besides the point, the first point, which is that it exists. The second point is that you have the bishop pair. The third point is that there's no clear way for black in this position to make progress, right? For example, if you attack this g2 pawn now, there's bishop f1 very quickly. And there's the ability of the dark squared bishop to attack f4, and maybe h4, and maybe h6. And maybe in some cases take c5 and take e5. And the rook is active here. If you take, you straighten white's pawns, or even white can consider just putting the bishop there. All of these ideas play in mind, and that shows you that, and there's of course queen c1, queen takes f4. That shows you that white should be absolutely fine. Instead, he played queen c2, which unfortunately just blunders away the game after queen f6. And you have to play bishop b5 here, though he might have been afraid of black's own exchange sacrifice, which makes a bit of sense. But actually, there's no real reason to fear that. Instead, he played queen d3, which is basically losing because of knight e5 here and c4, and you're getting mauled on the queen side eventually. Of course, not immediately because of queen takes, but eventually. Instead, rook c8 was tried, and now again we have the classic sacrificio. And now even without the queens on the board, you don't care because you're going to pick up the pawn, and actually without queens it makes more sense for white. So yeah, instead bishop e1, and this is just the losing move because now you're left with a bad bishop against a good knight, and everything else about the position is wrong for white, which was the case before, so there's no way to recover. And here white resigned actually here after having played queen f2, but knight d3 check would have just won the game immediately because of the pin, of course. So yeah, that would have been that would have been wait, no, that is how the game finished. Yeah, but Khaled had some chances there, and there were mutual errors in the opening, but overall a very good game by Adib, and a fine game by Khaled, but yeah, he kind of made some bad decisions later on. Okay, what do we have now? 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 Whoa! The brilliancy of the tournament. A brilliancy. Actually, guys, I want to state something. I was talking to Ralph Ignatius, whose games we'll see a bit later. Actually, was it? No, it wasn't in this round. Yeah, I think in round 4 we'll see one of his games against a strong player whom he beat. So I was talking about with him about this game, like he was telling me maybe he'll win the brilliancy prize of the tournament, and I told him, yeah, your game against that ex-strong player, who I will not reveal now to not spoil anything for you video watchers. So I was telling him, yeah, your game against him was brilliant, top 3 definitely of the tournament. Amr's game against Mahdi was also one of those top 3s, but this one takes the cake. And actually a day later he won the Brilliancy prize for this. Akram did. Dr. 1000 IQ here, Akram Khoder. Stunning game. We're about to witness a stunning game. Stunning. Exquisite. Exquisite. Yeah, guys. Okay, I don't want to hype this game up so much. Maybe someone out there will be like, okay, this isn't a Morphe game. Maybe it's not as exciting as this guy is telling us it is. But no, it is. It is so nice. So nice. Such a strong game. Okay, let's start off. So facing off against the very experienced Tarek Moudallal. Actually, funny story, in my first ever tournament, I saw Tarek Moudallal. My first ever tournament was a qualification tournament for the Lebanese Chess Championship, I think in 2013. Yes, 2013. And Tarek was playing there as well, and he qualified. So back from then, he was a very strong player. So yeah, we get to see a Kaoury, bishop b4 check. All of this has been seen before. Knight f3, and now c6 hasn't really been seen before. Usually you just take here and play c5 later on. I'm not going to cover Kaoury theory here. So c6 is a bit passive. So correctly castling, b6. Now he wants to play bishop b7 and all of that stuff, but it's a bit slow. He actually goes for bishop h6, which is, yeah, I guess reasonable, but a bit questionable. Just maybe better is bishop b7 and push c5. Rook d1. Akram knows what he's doing, lining up with the queen here. If only my arrow could reach there. And now Tarek goes for bishop d6. Which is, maybe I guess he played bishop b4 and didn't want to like maybe he thought, okay, I played bishop b4, I don't want to play bishop e7 back, which is basically the correct move. Bishop b7, bishop b7, c5. Because both of these moves, bishop b7 also would admit that like maybe bishop a6 isn't so great, and bishop e7 would admit like maybe bishop b4 isn't so great, but at the time they were played in the opening they were reasonable, so there's no reason not to play this. Like bishop b4 check here forces a concession, which is bishop d2, and this is well known, of course. Of course Tarek knows that, but maybe he didn't want to admit connected to the bishop a6. But yeah, like bishop d6 here, no real reason to block your queen's view. Of course there's the rook, so maybe he was thinking that was the case, but no, this isn't actually helpful. And here we'll get to see why that is the case. So we see b3 first of all. That's the first step in this genius combination, I would like to say. And actually the much deeper point of why the bishop is bad on d6 will be revealed in just a second. So we have knight bd7, and now e4, gaining space in the center. Takes, back, maybe knight f6, but doesn't change much. The queen would retreat to e2 or c2, probably c2, as we'll see why now. Bishop b7, queen c2, queen c7, and now this is why the bishop on d6 isn't so great. Oh! Damn, that's a good move. c5. c5. What's the point? What's the point behind c5? Let me just show you. So if b takes c5, we have d takes c5. And all of the captures don't work. Well, there are two. So knight takes c5, I just sacolito, and bishop a3, and goodbye. White is winning material here, of course, and has the bishop pair to boot, and a very strong dark squared bishop. And if b takes c5, bishop takes c5, we get to see not the seemingly appealing, appetizing rook takes d7, because after queen takes d7, queen takes c5, which seemingly wins the two minor pieces. First of all, no, black only has a pawn for it, and yeah, you have the bishop pair. So this looks appealing, but there's this check. Bishop f1, bye-bye. So that's why you need to insert the very clever knight g5, which threatens mate, forcing a concession with g6 or f5, doesn't really matter. And now this works, because there's no knight here. GG. And actually in this variation this is coming. So this wouldn't have worked. So if that doesn't work, then if he has to retreat, then we get to see bishop f4, gaining a tempo, and rook c8, and that's it. The bishop is dead. The bishop has nowhere to go. White gained a strong queenside initiative. Even if the bishop is here, it's not really doing anything. It might look like a nice diagonal, but it's not really doing anything. And yeah, this might look like a weakness, but I mean, the knight coming here, okay, be my guest. I get a knight to d6. Which one's stronger? And the knight can always be taken off. And you don't really even care about this bishop. Somewhat you do, but you don't care all that much, because you can always just jettison it, while this bishop is so bad. What's important is this knight and this strong bishop. This bishop, okay, I mean, sometimes can bite on granite, so amazing play. So from here on out, like, there aren't even any improvements for Akram. So let's just see how the positional maestro puts on the squeeze. Here he plays knight e5, not being afraid to trade pieces, even though he has the space advantage, because he sees that after takes and something like... Actually, I wonder, would he take... Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, like, he has many options, rook d6 being one of them, rook d7 at some point. But actually, more concretely, if this happens, let's say queen c7, I guess just this, and rook d6 at some point, and this should be easily winning. The engine definitely agrees here. The thing is, these bishops with this square and this very bad bishop, like, you have to... I can't explain how bad positionally it is. You just have to see how Akram converts to understand how bad it is. Like, of course, some of you know how bad it is. You've experienced some of these games, but if you haven't, and you think, oh yeah, this couldn't be so bad, you just have to see what happens. So queen d7, queen e2, just slowly improving the pieces. Slowly improving the pieces. Hit this double click with the mouse. So f6, kind of weakening though, but kicks off the bishop, bishop f8. Yeah, he's trying desperately for g5, h5, which he gets in, but it's not enough. b4, solidifying the queen side. Queen f7, moving the queen out of the way of the d file. Queen f3, better here was h4, preventing g5, but instead he played... So there were some inaccuracies in this brilliancy, but like extremely minor ones. Of course, he's still winning here. He's actually completely winning. So he allows this counterplay, but actually it just weakens black's king side as well. So maybe he didn't mind allowing that, and now plays this. Actually, here he had a slight improvement with b5. The point being, you can simply take the pawn if it isn't captured, and if it is captured, takes, and queen takes f5, you win a very nice pawn. This is on the way. This is also, this is like, this is just tragically losing. Instead, rook takes c6, white is still winning, of course, takes, bishop takes, and now we get to see some fireworks, starting with bishop takes g5. And okay, guys, so you'll see the sequence now, and Akram had to foresee this since playing c takes b6, basically. He had to foresee this entire sequence. I should have interviewed him actually for this game. Should have had him on Zoom or something. Anyway, bishop takes e1. Maybe I'll add it later in the video. And bishop takes d8, and this is just lost. You trade rook for rook, and these two pawns are super weak. So instead he played rook e8, and now rook b1. All of this is what? Forced. He took the piece, and bishop a4. Threatening to win here, and this. Remember, he had to see this all from 29 c takes b6. Rook d8, any miscalculation, you could lose the game. He takes, and now he foresees that this extra pawn is completely winning, which he's correct about. Takes, attacking the rook, rook b2, protecting f2, threatening queen d1 check, except not really, so it goes here. The bishop is covering, threatening bishop e6 check, bishop takes e6 check, so the queen defends. And now d5 anyway, trying to open up. Queen f3, trying to threaten queen h3, queen g2. Takes. And now, of course, this doesn't really work because of this. And we'll see something similar why this doesn't work. It's just black just gets mated. And again, he had to foresee... Well, he didn't have to foresee this exactly. Yeah, and he always... Does he have a bailout? Yeah, he always has a bailout by checking somehow and getting the queen to f1 so that this wouldn't be mate. So he always has a bailout. It's not as... Like, it doesn't require as much accuracy as it seems, but it's, of course, this is stunning. Here, rook c2. And now, actually, another very nice point is the finish. Queen h3 threatening mate, and now... Does he really even need to play something like check and somehow get the queen back here? No. He plays check, check, and queen h6. And Tarek resigns. Because after king takes h6, queen h6 is mating. Wow. What a positional crush. And then you have this bishop takes g5 with all of these complications. Insane game. I just have no more words to add. Actually, there's something I forgot to mention. I will only, like, this video is what, like, almost an hour long, and I've already added the analysis to the other games on the study, which I link in the description. So there's no real reason for me to just analyze all of these games. Then this would be 2 hours long, and in the later rounds I'll only probably increase the games analyzed. So I'm sticking with 5 analyzed games for this video, and probably for the remaining videos, even the later rounds. 5 boards should be enough, and for the other rounds, for the other boards, you can see them on my study. You can see the engine analysis. And yeah, what a brilliant game by Akram. Let me show you guys the standings. Unfortunately, Chess Results doesn't allow me to show you the standings round by round, but yeah, here we have round 3. So basically Amr has 3 points, Akram has 3 points, and Adib has 3 points, and the remaining are on 2.5 or 2 or what have you. So did I miss anyone on 3 points? Don't think so. So yeah, what a nice game though by Akram. So let's see, he'll probably get paired against either Adib or I keep pressing the windows, but he'll probably get paired against either Adib or Amr in the next round. So let's see how he'll do, right? So that will be exciting. Actually, I did notice something, which is that no, I didn't know. I remembered something, which is I think he played against Amr in the 4th round. So yeah, look forward to that, guys. These videos are taking me some time to produce because they're so long and require so much analysis, but hopefully you guys are enjoying them. So without further ado, let's yeah, see you hopefully in the 4th round of the Lebanese Chess Championship. See who's gonna be the winner. Alright guys, with that, take care.